It's good to be in contact with you here again after about 2 weeks or so. I guess it's more than 2 weeks. All right, let's start. Yes, I will record it. Okay, I'll start with grammatical cohesion, and then I'll try to cover lexical cohesion as well if time permits. Generally speaking, cohesion has to do with go-togetherness, or how words tie with one another. When we speak or when we write, the words that sit side by side are not just separate entities, but in fact they relate in one way or another to each other. This relationship is achieved by cohesion, which might be at lexical level or at grammatical level. Grammatical cohesion or grammatical links can be classified under three headings. That is, this go-togetherness of lexical expressions that we're talking about, can be seen from three different perspectives. Reference, ellipsis and substitution, and conjunction. References improve cohesion because when you have a referring expression, this referring expression refers to an expression that was earlier stated or that is to be stated in the coming discourse. Like pronouns. A pronoun is tied with a noun. When you use a pronoun, it indicates that you earlier used a noun and now you use a pronoun instead of that noun. Or you use a pronoun because you anticipate a noun in future. Demonstratives like this, that, so on. Comparative constructions. When we use comparative constructions, in fact, you are comparing one thing with another. In a way, you are relating two things to each other in terms of an attribute. Like when you say Jack is older than John, you are comparing Jack and John in terms of age, and so the relationship between Jack and John is achieved by means of this attribute age. Other expressions like there, such as, when you use there, you make something definite, again implying that you earlier used some noun or you referred to some phenomenon. Now you are referring to it again, but you're making it definite. So again, that relationship is established. Or such as indicates that you used a general category earlier, now you're specifying it. So the relationship between the general and the specific is achieved by means of an expression like such as. Such expressions are references. And references generally can be of two types, anaphoric and exophoric. Anaphoric references are references which have to do with the text itself. We also call them text references. Exophoric references are references in relation to the phenomena outside the text. So anaphoric references are text references. Exophoric references are context references. Right? So exophoric references will refer to the world outside your discourse, outside your text, outside your text. So I have defined reference as a relationship between the meaning of a word and its environment, be it inside or outside the text. Well, oftentimes it's easy to identify the referent of a referring expression, but sometimes you get into trouble. Sometimes it's difficult to find the referent of a referring expression, and in fact, the reference, the referring expression, refers to the ongoing discourse. Like this one. It rained day and night for 2 weeks, the basement flooded and everything was underwater. It has spoiled all our calculations. What does the second it refer to? It has spoiled all our it. What does it refer to? The rain. Well, it might refer to the rain, but it might also refer to all the event that happened, because it was not only the rain that has spoiled their calculations. The rain, the flooded, the flooded basement, the basement flooded, right? The flooding basement, and so everything was underwater, which meant that they could not leave house under that terrible condition, right? So it has spoiled their calculations, not the rain, but the whole event, including the rain, the basement flooding, and everything underwater, right? So it refers to the whole topic, the whole discourse. Take this one. It seems everyone's read that self-help book, Greg Bernhardt, and Lee Stock-Silos is just not that into you. The No Excuses Truth to Understanding Guide. First in the US, then all over the world, women became converts to the book's tough love message. When it was published late last year, Oprah sang its praises, cheerful women called it the Bible, and others declared it had changed their lives forever. It's, what does it refer to? Yes, it refers to the book. What was the name of the book? Bible? No. Bernhardt? Bernhardt is the author. The name of the book is, you see, you get into trouble. The name of the book is Just Not That Into You. The No Excuses Truth to Understanding Lies. This is the name of the book. So I just wanted to show you that sometimes you get into trouble identifying the referent of referring expressions. Writers and speakers are faced with a number of such choices as how to relate one part to another part. Uh, how to, as a writer or as a speaker, how to speak or how to write so that it would be transparent to your reader or to your listener. Well, in a study, Lind 1979 asked people to describe their apartments. She observed that there were differences in the distribution of it and that. So let's have examples. So she asked people to describe their apartments. And one person described her apartment this way. And the living room was a very small room. It looked nice. You entered into a tiny little hallway and the kitchen was off that. You see, in the first example, the speaker uses it. In the second example, the speaker uses that. How? What's the difference? Why did he or she use it for the first example, that for the second example? No, they are not used in the same way. Definitely wrong. It refers to the subject, the living room, right? Good. And what about that? Excuse me, I got disconnected for a few minutes. Do you have my voice now? All right. So I was saying that I was in fact asking you about these two examples. And I agreed with one of you saying that it refers to the living room. And Jabbar Zainab says that is used when you want to draw attention to something specific. Not something specific. That is used when you want to draw the hearer's attention to another place or another phenomenon. Notice that in the first example, the living room was a very small room. It looked nice. It refers to the same place. All right? It refers to the same place. But take the second example. You entered into a tiny little hallway and the kitchen was off that. You are talking about two places, right? A hallway, a kitchen. So you are drawing the attention of your hearers from the hallway to the kitchen, right? So if the focus, in fact, it's the question of the focus of attention. In the first example, the focus of attention does not change, whereas in the second example, the focus of attention changes. So if the focus of attention does not change, we use it. But if the focus of attention changes, we use that. So there is a difference, contrary to what one of you said. The an American film Airplane contains the following dialogue. Excuse me, sir. There has been a little problem in the cockpit. The cockpit? What is it? It's a little room at the front of the plane where the pilot sits, but that's not important right now. What happens? A place in the airplane. I am talking about it. What is it? What does it refer to? What is it? What does it refer to? That's the question. No. If it refers to the cockpit, then the question is, well, the question is meaningless. It does not refer to the cockpit. It refers to the problem. The stewardess says, excuse me, sir, there's been a little problem in the cockpit. The cockpit? What is it? What is it? Well, it refers to the problem, not the cockpit. Sometimes, of course, we use these pronouns deliberately in a way, well, to create humor and to change atmosphere. Right, so we need to provide an account of why we use it and what it refers to. I mean, pronouns, referring expressions refer to understand how or what these referring expressions refer to, whether to the text or whether to the context, then description is or might not be enough. We need, more than descriptions. We sometimes need explanations, right? We need explanations to find out what it refers to, what a referring expression refers to. We need to attend to the discourse, not only to the text, but also the context, the greater, context. Pronouns has subsequent mentions of an introducing noun phrase. Sometimes pronouns precede nouns. We anticipate nouns to appear in our discourse, so we use pronouns. And these situations or these expressions are called cataphoric expressions, right? So, and sometimes, you use a pronoun, then you use a pronoun, then you in the coming discourse you use a referring expression like a pronoun, but on the third occurrence of the expression, you might again use the same noun, not the referring expression or the pronoun. Why you make mention of the referent itself, the noun itself, and not the referring expression? That's the reason lies in distance. When you feel that the distance becomes great to the point that it might dissect the referent and the referent from the referring expression, then you tend to use the expression itself. So using the referring expression or pronoun or the noun is not in free variation. These decisions are context bound. These decisions are contextual decisions. We decide to use the noun or the pronoun that refers to the noun on the basis of the context in which they are used. So these decisions are discourse based. Take this example. The brain is one above brains, making thousands of billions of connections with each other. It is the most powerful data processor we know, but at the same time it is incredibly delicate. As soft as a ripe avocado, the brain has to be encased in the tough bones of the skull and floats in its own waterbed of fluid. An adult brain weighs over 31 B and fills the skull. It It receives 1/5 of the blood pumped out by the heart at each beat. The brain looks not unlike a huge walnut kernel. It is dome-shaped with a wrinkled surface and is in two halves joined in the middle. Notice that sometimes we use it and sometimes the writer uses the brain. Take sentence number 1, the brain is. Sentence number 2, the brain again. But in 3, the writer opts for it. It is the most. And in 4, again, the writer shifts to the brain, not it. In 5, again, the brain. 6, it. 7, the brain. Notice that the choice of it or brain is not in free variation. It's not a voluntary decision. Going for it or going for the brain depends on your understanding of discourse and the relation that that word in that sentence has with other sentences preceding or proceeding it. And this is a functional analysis of those statements. In the first sentence, in the first statement, the brain, let's get back to it. The brain is our most precious organ, the one above all which allows us to be human. In the second statement, the brain as data processor. In the third statement, the brain's physical environment. In the fourth statement, the brain adult. And in the fifth, the brain in appearance. Notice that in all these, the word brain plays a specific function. The function is not the same, but in fact the word functionally differs from one statement to another statement. I talked about this. Hawkins, 1978, argues that this and that do not normally introduce completely new reference. And that is true. Sometimes the reference that they introduced has already been mentioned. Like you say, this man you should talk to is Dan Smith, or that man you should talk to is Dan Smith. Right? So this man you should talk to indicates that, probably you have talked about this man earlier. But what would be the function of this or that? I have said that the function of this or that is that you drag it into your context and you make it the focus of attention. You drag it into your context and make it your current focus of attention. First square 19 and then cube it. First square 19 and then cube it. First square 19 and then cube that. Which one would you say? First square 19 and then cube that. But I would go for 13. I think if you go for 13 or 14, then you would end up with different results. How? First square 19 and then cube it. First square 19 and then cube that. Both are correct, but they have different conclusions. They have different consequences. Well, if I say first square 19 and then cube it, if you use it refers to 19. It refers to 19. But if I say first square 19 and then cube that, don't forget what I said about this or that, about it or that. I said if we use it refers to the same place. The focus of attention does not change. But if I use that, the focus of attention changes. Well, if the focus of attention changes in 14, then that does not refer to 19. That refers to something else. What does it refer to? What does that refer to? First square 19 and then cube that. You know what a square is? Square is a verb. Here. First square 19. If you square 19, you mean you multiply 19 by 19. You multiply 19 by 19. And what would be the result? 19 by 19. Yes, 361. So first square 19 and then cube that, which means cube 361. So if I say first square 19 and cube it, it refers to 19. But if I say first square 19 and then cube that, that refers to 361. So I have to cube 361, not 19. So you see that the difference between 13 and 14 is great, is huge. So in 14, the focus of attention changes across we have in fact focus of attention that is that changes from the original place to another place. But when we use it, the focus of attention does not change. Take number 15. Coming out from the base of the brain like a stalk is the brainstem. This is the swollen top of the spinal cord, which runs down to our tail. This coming out from the base of the brain like a stalk is the brainstem. This is the swollen top of the spinal cord, which runs down to our tail. What does this refer to? What does this refer to? This refers to what? The brainstem. This refers to the brainstem. So, when the focus of attention changes, we use this or that. When the focus of attention does not change, we use it. Well, I showed you these examples. Take this example. These are examples that might appear in in your papers or in your thesis later on. A novice writer might write introduction. It traces the development of dialectology. How do you see the relationship between introduction and it? this is a problem that usually occurs when you write your thesis. You write introduction and then you write it traces the development, it referring to the introduction. While native speakers of English do not use it here. Instead, they use this, or they use the noun phrase itself. That is, either they repeat introduction here, they say introduction traces, or the introduction traces the development, or they write this traces, but they do not use it, right? So they might write something like my introduction, but notice how this was rewritten. My introduction was too short, it had to be rewritten. Here it is rightly used. Right? It refers to the introduction, and it is, well, the focus of attention has not changed. But notice that these are two separate parts in this example. Introduction, it traces. These are two completely separate parts, and it, cannot refer to, is not fused with introduction here. So let's conclude. It is the unmarked reference item and refers to current entities or focus of attention. Right? Current entity and focus of attention. This signals a shift of entity or shift of focus to a new focus. That signals reference across entities or foci of attention. So this and that are used almost in the same way, right? When we have a shift of entity, that is, when you talk about one entity and then later you talk about another entity, or you talk about, or you draw the attention of your readers to one phenomenon, and then you draw their attention to another phenomenon. So this or that are used in the same way. Well, looking outward, or situation reference, or exophoric reference. Well, exophoric reference directs us to the immediate context, outward from the text, to identify the reference of a reference. The reference of a reference. When anaphoric reference does not supply the necessary information. Right? So the reference is assumed by the speaker or writer to be part of a shared world. In Iraq, if you say the government, you do not mean the American government, you do not mean the Japanese government. In Iraq, when you say the government, you mean, the Iraqi government. Right? Because this is part of the shared knowledge of the people living in Iraq. In Iran, when we say the government, we mean, the Iranian government, because that is the that is part of the shared meaning in Iran. This is also true about the government in the United States when it is stated by others in the United States. So you have not used the expression government well in the earlier discourse, but still it is accompanied by the. It is accompanied by the. Why? Because the government is already known to you. And so you tie this with the government outside. That's why you say the government and not a government. This is also true about other expressions, like when we say the Queen. If you're in Spain and you say the Queen, well, you mean the Queen of Spain. If you're in Denmark and you say the Queen, then you mean the Queen of Denmark. If you're in England and you say the Queen, then you mean the Queen of England. Right? Take the final example. We always take the car since we just put the kids, the dog, and the luggage into it. Again, notice that you use the car, the kids, the dog, the luggage. Why? Because you already know what these nouns refer to. Well, the car refers to our car. The kids, our kids. Our dog, our luggage. So these are already known to us. Not that they are definite, but because they tie with the objects outside in my discourse. They tie with the objects outside in my discourse. So exophoric references are connected to the world outside. Looking forward, or cataphoric reference. Sometimes you use a pronoun before you use the noun or a noun. So a pronoun is first used because you anticipate a noun to occur in future. Take this example. She claims Leo Tolstoy as a distinct cousin. The granny was Alexei Tolstoy, the famous Red Count who sided with Lenin's revolutionaries. Now Tatiana Tolstoy has put pen to paper in a case to demonstrate that somebody from a family can write compactly. What does she refer to? She. Unknown knowledge. Tatiana, yes, she refers to Tatiana. Well, so you see that the name of the person is used after the pronoun is used. This is an example of cataphoric reference. Cataphoric references engage and hold the reader's attention with a read-on and find-out message. You see, it creates a state of bewilderment or I don't know. You see, it holds the reader's attention to with a read-on and find-out message. You see, you keep the reader on toes. She has to be very mindful, very careful, so that she will not misconnect she with another person. We also have Leo Tolstoy, Alexei Tolstoy, Lenin, right? All these people, but still she refers to Tatiana. Why? Because we find the relationship between she and Tatiana. But notice that it's a bit difficult to find out what she refers to. We have to wait. We have to be patient with our text until we find the right referent to refer to. Ellipsis and substitution. Well, ellipsis is defined as the omission of elements normally required by the grammar, which the speaker or writer assumes are obvious from the context and so need not be raised. So ellipsis is the omission of elements normally required by the grammar. That is, you ellipse or you omit an element because the grammar of the language allows you to. Ellipsis is the speaker choice made independently, made pragmatically. Ellipsis is the speaker choice that is made on a pragmatic basis of the situation. Ellipsis is not compulsory. Ellipsis is not compulsory. In fact, ellipses are retrievable verbatim from the surrounding text. Let's take this example. The kids will carry the small boxes, the adults the large ones. What is ellipted? What is omitted? What happened? The boxes? No. It doesn't refer to the boxes. The kids will carry the small boxes, the adults the large ones. Instead of boxes, the writer has used ones. Small boxes, large ones. Ones is a substitution, not ellipsis. What is ellipted or what is omitted is will carry. Will carry. The kids will carry the small boxes, the adults will carry the large ones. But will carry is ellipted on account of grammar, because of grammar. If you could, I'd like you to be back here by 5:30. If you could, I'd like it to be back by 5:30. What is ellipted? What is ellipted? Yes, if you could be back. If you could be back, I would like you to be back here by 5:30. If possible, could you lend me your car for a couple? If it is possible, right? If it is possible to lend me your car, could you lend me your car for a couple of hours? If it is possible. Alright, English also has three types of ellipses. Ellipses at nominal, verbal, and closal levels. Two common types of verbal type ellipses are echoing and auxiliary contrasting. Echoing refers to when the same expression is repeated. Auxiliary contrasting is when the auxiliary changes. So, will anyone be waiting? Jim will, I should think. What is ellipted? What is ellipted? Will anyone be waiting? Jim will, I should think. Jim will be waiting, yes. Jim will be waiting. And notice that will does not change. Will does not change. This is an example of echoing. Now an example of auxiliary contrasting. Has she married? No, but she will one day, I'm sure. But she will one day, I'm sure. What is ellipted? Marry, yes. But she will marry one day, I'm sure. Notice that has she married? The auxiliary in one has now changed to will in the second statement. Has she married? No, but she will one day. So when auxiliary changes, this is an example of auxiliary contrasting. Can I meet you in your office? You may, if nothing comes up. Can I meet you in your office? What is ellipted? What is ellipted? What is omitted? Can I meet you in your office? You may meet me in my office if nothing comes up. So what is ellipted? Meet me in my office. This is omitted. And notice that the auxiliary has changed. Can to may. So this is an example of auxiliary contrasting. Sometimes the subject and finite, that is to be, are ellipted. I'll tell you what he's doing. Driving around his flash car, that's what he, or chatting with his cabinet friend. What happens? I'll tell you what he's doing. Driving around his flash car, that's what, or chatting with his cabinet friend. He is driving around, he is, but he is dropped. He is driving around his flash car. That's what he is. Or chatting with his cabinet friend. Right? So, and I'll tell you what he is doing. He is driving around in his flash car. That's what he is. So the subject and the finite, by finite we mean auxiliary, are omitted. We also have clausal ellipsis in English. That is, the whole clause is dropped. Like you say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I hope so. I hope so. Can't help you. I can't help you. Well, sometimes, a clause is dropped. He said he would take early retirement as soon as he could, and he has. In fact, originally the sentence is, he said he could take early retirement as soon as he could take early retirement, and he has taken early retirement. I'm sure we'll find your mom, but God knows where. What is ellipted? Where we'll find your mom, yes. We also have ellipsis under the grammar of coordination. Goat's milk and cheese. What is ellipted here? Gives? Has? We don't have has in the phrase. This is apostrophe S, not has. Yes, it refers to goat. goat's milk and goat's cheese. He fired and missed the target. He fired and he missed the target. Exactly. So this coordinating expression and goat's milk and goat's cheese. He fired and he missed. And in fact, well, is the coordinating expression that facilitates the omission of the second expression. It makes possible the omission of the second expression. Well, substitution. Substitution, we believe, is similar to ellipsis, that in English it operates either at nominal, verbal, and clausal level. We also said that, well, ellipsis operates at these three levels, nominal, verbal, and clausal level. Substitution also operates at these three levels. Well, substituting expressions are one, do, so, not, same. Substitution is, we say, is a relation between words. This is a general definition. I offered him a seed. He said he didn't want one. What is substitution? He said he didn't want a seed. Yes. Try reading this book. That one's not very good. That book. Yes, that book is not very good. Did Mary take that letter? She might have done. What is the substitution expression? She might have done. Did Mary take that letter? She might have done. Do. Done is the substituting expression. Right? So done is the substituted expression. And in fact, it substitutes she might have taken that letter. Well, substitutions and omission, ellipsis, might be confused because they are very close to one another. The difference between substitutions and pronouns is also very delicate. Well, substitutes may be modified. So we may say the old one, the one on the corner, old modifies one. On the corner modifies one. But pronouns cannot be modified. I can't say I read it. But why should we do this if we believe that sometimes separating these pronouns, omissions, deletions, references, substitution, If they are very difficult to do, why should we do that? We do this, we classify references, we classify omissions, we classify substitutions at different levels, clausal level, sentence level, lexical level. We do this because they are pedagogically important. It enhances instruction. It is pedagogically useful to students. Conjunctions. Well, a conjunction does not set off a search backward or forward. But it does presuppose a textual coherence. You see, when we use conjunctions, we do not want to say that this conjunction expression refers to another word in the preceding or in the proceeding discourse. We don't mean that. But when we use a conjunction, it presupposes a textual coherence, that there are relationships between two elements across sentences. Clauses are linked by a single word conjunction. We connect two sentences to one another by a conjunction. Sometimes we connect two phrases. Sometimes we connect two lexical items by a conjunction. So, take this example. He was insensitive to the group's needs. Consequently, there was a lot of bad feelings. You see, consequently connects the first sentence to the second. This is at the level of connecting clauses. The bad feeling was a consequence of his insensitivity to the group's needs. A consequence, this is at the nominal level. This is a lexical item. A consequence of his insensitivity to the group's needs. In fact, this is a better statement academically. The writer could have written it differently. He could have written it this way. His feelings were bad. Consequently, he was insensitive to the group's needs. See, his feelings were bad. Consequently, he was insensitive to the group's needs. But he has connected the two parts by using a conjunction at the lexical level. And this is the classification of conjunctions by Michael Halliday. There are three types of conjunctions, or three functions: elaboration, extension, and enhancement. They perform one of three functions: apposition, clarification, addition, variation. These are the subtypes and examples just beside them. Then you have extension. The subtypes are addition and variation. Enhancement. The subtypes are spatiotemporal and causal conditional. In linguistics, we also call them discourse markers. We call them discourse markers. This is another classification. Cohesion is also achieved by tense and aspect. By aspect, we mean the verb. Right? The verb, its mood structure, whether in progressive or in simple form. So cohesion is also achieved by tense and aspect. By examining data, discourse analysts are able to observe regular correlations between discourse types and tense and aspect. That is, there is a connection between the type of discourse and your choice of tense and aspect. So take this example of Zydetis. Well, Zydetis looked at English texts where present perfect is either dominant or in regular contrast with past simple. So either present perfect or past simple. Zydetis observed three functions for present perfect. When present perfect is used in the press, in newspapers. It may convey hot news, it may express experiences, it may relate to present effects of changes and accomplishments. So take this example, which normally appears in newspapers. The government has announced. See, the writer has not said the government announced. He says the government has announced. Right, so in hot news, they use present perfect, not simple past. Letters to the editor, or letter to the editors, or agony aunt column. What is an agony aunt column? An agony aunt column. In newspapers, there is a section wherein a concealed editor answers questions by those readers who have problems, who have encountered a problem, and so they jot down their problem, they write down their own problem, and then they send it to the editor of the newspaper, and then in the newspaper there is a concealed editor who answers those questions. The concealed editor is called agony aunt column. Well, you have a problem, a personal problem, but you do not want to mention your own name, right? So you write to the newspaper, and in the newspaper there is this agony aunt writer who writes to you, answering your questions or helping you find your problems, but he or she is also not known to you. They usually have nicknames. They call it agony aunt, right? So, and in an agony aunt column or in letter to the editors, they use present perfect, not past simple. So take this example. A British firm has landed a huge shipping contract in Brazil. The deal was signed at the meeting today in London. So a British firm has landed a huge shipping contract. Well, sometimes present perfect contrasts with past simple. You see, you first introduce the topic very generally and then you make it a specific. A British firm has landed a huge shipping contract. This is very general, but then you specify it. You topicalize it. The deal was signed at the meeting today in London. So you make it a specific, or you bring it to the focus of attention, topicalize it, and so when generally stated, present perfect. When it's made a specific, then past simple. Biographical sketches and obituaries is about dead people, are also a source of this shift of attention, this shift of tense. This is also true about academic texts. In academic texts, we sometimes go for present simple, sometimes for past, sometimes for present perfect. Again, you have to be very careful, very mindful of the use of simple present tense, past tense, and present perfect in academic texts. This has been described in Swales. And I should remind you of a very important decision in language teaching. It is unfortunate to say that in language teaching, we oftentimes focus on grammar at the word level. We focus on tenses, we focus on nouns, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns in isolation from the context. It's important to see that grammar outside context is meaningless, is not valuable. It's only inside this context wherein grammar becomes meaningful. So it's probably time to draw our students' attention to these elements as they relate to the context of their use, rather than in isolation from the context. Alright, that's it for today. That was grammatical cohesion. Next session I discuss vocabulary cohesion, lexical cohesion. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.